All right. If there's anybody here that hasn't attended regularly or would like to introduce themselves or start out any comments, here's your chance. Don't feel obligated, but jump in if you want. All right, then. I guess 2 project updates. We can do this in whatever order folks would like to, but we have, so the list is on the meeting notes, but Virtual Summit of Maintainers. I don't see Luigi, so we'll move that one down for Security Insights, office hours. I've been seeing some stuff pop out there. Looks like this is all happening in the office hours channel. Metrics dashboard, we've got Christine, Jay, Nirav, et cetera, there to chat about that. And then we can kind of go down from there. Virtual Summit of Maintainers.
All right.
Who would like to talk about that?
Yeah, this is Alex. Emily, Fox, and Munawar Hafiz, and also Excel. I don't know if she can make it today, but we were working on preparing Virtual Summit event, and one of those task team has prepared some of the detailed documentation, also presentation to present to maybe a tech or other working groups to get consensus. And we reached out to Linux Foundation event team, and also Brian, thanks for joining here, mentioned that there are certain other events that maybe we can do planning or collaborate together. So before we get into more details, I don't know anything that you want to talk about, what aspect that we can see from working with a bigger OpenSSF group.
Sorry, if that was a question for me. No, I would just, let's just have a conversation, open. Yeah.
Emily and Munawar, would you like to add anything that you want to discuss? I know
Yes.
we'd like to get some input from Brian too.
So we have been meeting for the past, hi, this is Munawar. So we have been meeting for the past 4 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks regarding to iron out different aspects of it. Right now, the idea would be to have a POC kind of in-person virtual event in mid-January with a small group of participants. A small group, by that we mean about 10 to 15 important open source projects, about 30 to 40 maintainers of those projects. This would be an invitation only event, about 3 to 5 hours of commitment for 1 day. And it will be done in a workshop format, as in there will be an opening remarks. There may be an initial presentation, then there'll be separate working groups. There'll be working with so splitting this up into maybe 3 or 4 small groups, where we'll be talking about their specific pain points, their stories of how they deal with security issues, incidents responses, how people can help, and so on. So those would be the goals of the specific working groups. Then we come back together, we'll have a panel, and we try to create some understanding, common understanding from all of that we then later want to present as a blog, some sort of other notes, and then we may be able to also present this to the other OpenSSF organizations for them to consume this information. So that's so this is going to be a POC. I'm using the term POC here because we'll just try this out in a small scale with the help of Linux Foundation. Their event stuff, with their help, we'll create a virtual meetup space where we're going to be able to do that. We still haven't had the meeting with the Linux Foundation events folks yet, so that's why the details are TBD at this point. But once we have this, the future plan would be to perhaps like next year when the OpenSSF event, the summit actually happens, then we can also have try this out as an in-person event down the line. So that's kind of, and as far as the 10 to 15 projects that we want to be participating there, the plan right now is to like reach out through our personal connections with important projects. There's also projects that are connected with Alpha Omega, like I've connected with Eclipse Foundation, like Michael Barbero of Eclipse Foundation, and like we can also include the, we plan to also include the PyPI people. We also want to include the Rust Foundation people, maybe have those people because there's already a link with that. I'm working with Amir to like basically get some of the important security repositories that they have identified, like Caleb and the others have been preparing a list. And Amir is also like the OSTIF is also doing this kind of reviews for the past year or so. So he has already gotten interaction and personal relationship perhaps with some of these projects. So getting some of those. So I don't think like getting to that critical 10 to 15 people is 10 to 15 projects is not necessarily very difficult. However, Amir has been away for the past few weeks. So he just texted me yesterday that he's going to be back this Saturday and he's going to help me get those. So we expect to get a list completed by in a couple of weeks. And I've already started an Excel sheet where we are keeping track of or just putting ideas at this point, like, okay, and 10 to 15 projects is not difficult, but still, like, we need to finalize that. And most importantly, the biggest goal up front right now is to have that meeting with the Linux Foundation events folks. And once we do that, we can actually finalize a date and then start circulating people. There's also other aspect of, we want to invite some panelists. So we are figuring out, like Alex and Ishel and Emily has been figuring out which are the people who would be invited in the panels, who would be the moderators of the event. We'll also have to figure out the questions, etc., beforehand and so on. So there's a lot of tasks that are also going on preparing. But the biggest task up front is to have that meeting with the Linux Foundation. Then we have an actual date that we can start circulating around. That's kind of the update.
Okay, so if I understand this correctly, it's to try to have essentially a workshop that is fairly on the small side, right? You know, it's 15 projects, about 40 people. It's to really just have a kind of a listening session on their pain points, deciding who to invite, what those 15 projects are. You can't cast the net too wide because then everyone will want to go. You don't want to make it too narrow because then there's some biases. I mean, what's the process that you're using to decide who the right set of 15 are, and frankly, what are the goals for the meeting? I mean, I see it in the presentation, but you know, hearing, I mean, there's this saying, like every open source project that is a little bit broken in a different way, very much like Tolstoy's families in War and Peace. They're you know, each of them broken in a slightly different way. So you know, are we trying to learn? What are we trying to learn by having this event, I guess? Maybe that's explicit in the deck, but yeah. I see on page 7 in the deck, event survey. Maybe this is a good way to try to say what you're hoping to get out of the event.
So the intent of the pre-event survey is to kind of gather information from maintainers or members of the various foundations, organizations, and projects to understand that initial set of concerns, care abouts, areas where they need assistance. The structure of that pre-event survey is still trying to be determined. It might be beneficial to focus on the alignment structure that the OpenSSF has and group questions in those similar constructs. So if it's identifying critical threats to projects, if it's securing projects, if it's about best practices or vulnerability response, and kind of breaking down those survey areas into more finite, concrete directions and idea gathering to those potential attendees. From there, we plan on taking those responses, kind of representing that back to the maintainer community, and then deep diving into further breakout sessions to really understand the nuanced pain points associated with each of those core areas of work that the foundation is already pursuing, to ensure both that maintainers feel comfortable with the members and leaders of the foundation that are driving those efforts and they know who to go and ask questions of, but also to kind of give them a voice to any potential concerns or challenges or adoption issues that they're experiencing, and taking advantage of the work that's already coming down out of the foundation. So basically, ultimately opening up the lines of communication, letting them know where the correct people are and locations and the work that's going on in progress, and ensuring that the work that's being done within the foundation, the group, those activities are well received or positioned to be better received by those maintainers in a way that's less friction for them to adopt.
Thank you. And when I understood in the beginning, if we have this office hours that taking input from the users and answer question by the SMEs. This could be like an open mic session from foundations or maintainers, a key maintain open source project to share their opinions, right, and broadcast maybe or gather inputs from the community.
Okay.
And this will be we start with just one proof of concept or MVP, but we're hoping to make it bi-monthly or quarterly or whenever it makes sense to do it over and over, so that we can maintain it as like a community event virtually.
Okay. Well, I think there's a lot of. Yep. Go ahead.
Sorry, I think it's actually one of the benefit, which is in addition to us getting information from and providing information to maintainers, having it be in a workshop format means that there's, I think there's an opportunity for connective tissue to grow between the projects themselves, because for the most part, most projects are feeling the same pain, at least that's the hypothesis. And therefore, just having those open conversations, what worked for you? Oh, this worked for me. Oh, great. I should try that out. You should meet this, like building that out. There are lots of other avenues where this could be done, but in the context of security and OpenSSF, why not try it?
Yeah, we and I'll mention the Linux Foundation's research team did a large survey of maintainers a couple of months ago as well about security practices and security perspectives. I think they issued an interim kind of report on the first kind of waves of that, but there's more to digest. And Stephen Hendricks on the research team has been kind of owning this. So I could. He's somebody I think we should bring in, and just so we can use some of the prior research and some of the prior information that's been gathered. I do want to just emphasize, the answers you get from this work will vary tremendously based on the people you invite, and thinking carefully about, even the prioritization, the decision making you make about who to ask will weigh heavily on the outcome. And so I think it's important not to characterize the results of this process as reflecting either a consensus view of the entirety of the open source community or speaking for all maintainers. It's really just, here's the subset of the folks we happen to talk to, and who self-selected really to participate in this, right? So I think if this is like, here's a set of data points, here's some analysis on the data points and some interesting outcomes, I think that'll be tremendously helpful to the OpenSSF, other efforts of the OpenSSF and beyond. But I think this should also complement, some sort of regular process for kind of a broad fan out of polling of maintainers across a larger group in some ways. So just kind of free thinking here. And so in terms of like burden on the organization to support, or what's needed, let me put it that way, for us as the Linux Foundation or as OpenSSF staff to support this, it doesn't sound like it's much more than a Zoom call. It sounds like you all would probably staff this in terms of conducting the event, having moderators to lead breakouts. You'd probably also, I'm assuming, digest the information that's shared, take notes, have some sort of outcome from that meeting that is a result. If all you're asking from us is the ability to host this on Zoom, and maybe a little bit of kind of production, this doesn't sound like a big lift at all, and that'd be great. I think we have to be careful about, this is a private meeting, so we have to have the antitrust stuff kind of pop up, and have one of us on staff kind of attending the meeting to make sure things don't steer in the wrong way, just to keep us all above board. But other than that, this is not a hard thing, and we don't have to involve, I believe, the events team in this kind of thing, which would incur a bunch of costs. This is the Linux Foundation events team. I'm talking about the ones who do the KubeCon events and OSS events and the like. They do virtual events for sure, but that's more in the vein of like webinars and larger group things. So this, I think, is really just a larger version of this kind of meeting we're on right now, if I understand correctly, unless I misunderstand anything.
So which team at the foundation is responsible for survey coordination?
For survey coordination. So there's the Linux Foundation research team headed by Hillary Carter, who I think you might have met. Stephen Hendricks works for her as well. And they've done a couple of these kind of surveys. They were the ones as well who coordinated, I believe, coordinated with the Harvard Business School on the open source census work. Not everything has to go through them or anything like that. I don't mean to say that they're a gateway to anything, this kind of thing, but what I would like to do is take this to Stephen Hendricks and connect this to some prior survey work that had been done. And I think he'd find this really fascinating and useful, and I hope it'd be a net major contributor to this effort.
Agreed. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. No, I first found out about this from some research, some outreach that had been done to Angela Brown, who runs events at the LF, and then she turned to me and went, "Have you heard of this?" And I hadn't. So glad to be aware of this now. And I think we can support you directly on this, rather than needing to involve the LF events team.
Sure. Yeah, we actually discussed internally, it could be sufficient with Zoom too. So we were not just sure how many audience or how many people will be joining. So just trying to get some of those inputs and advices, and we're gonna walk. Before we walk, we're gonna crawl. So
Sure.
We'll see.
Sure.
Yep. Yeah, we can try with that.
And Hillary or Stephen might actually be helpful as well to think about some of the framing and how to ask the right kinds of questions. It's actually, I find it very hard not to ask leading questions when I have in my head what the right kind of answers might be. So really asking questions the right way. And I really like Zoom's support now for breakouts as well. That seems to work pretty well in a couple of meetings I've been in. So you fan out and then you bring everybody back to one room at the end of some duration, right?
Right.
Okay.
And we got to be able to have a admin or access control in Zoom, right? I think there's a place to request that access, right?
Yeah, well, I think what I would do is ask, one of us on staff to be the host for this meeting, and the host, we could probably share a co-host with a couple of people as well, and that's how you'd kind of manage the fan out to the different breakout rooms and when to bring people back. Yeah, the only other thing that comes to mind. Oh, go ahead.
No. Sorry. Yeah, we can test it. Yeah.
One last thing that does come to mind for me is on the event format, I see you'd like to kind of second to last is the panel. We do have a pretty strictly held rule that for any Linux Foundation event, even for things that are kind of smaller and private like this, that we not have manels, all male.
Correct.
So
we're already aware and have accounted.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. We actually thought about it, and we're not 100% sure whether it falls in that category or not. But thank you for clarification. Yeah,
it's to the point where we've canceled panels when a late breaking change meant that we could not guarantee that. So
right,
good to know. Great, and I see in terms of panelists, you might want either OSSF leadership to participate, maybe somebody from the governing board as well. I can certainly help recruit that, although I mean other people here know many of them as well. So I will. What I'll take back from this is I'll work with my team to figure out who will support this. And I know we don't have a date set yet, it looks like, so we might just want to pick a date that doesn't clash with some other major industry event. But I think if we're looking at January, I think we can all be pretty flexible in this.
Right. Actually, Emily brought that point too internally. We should avoid any major events. Right.
For a small workshop like this, just looking at the very end, finding a rock star. I mean, are you certain you need somebody who? I mean, if the focus point of this 3.5 4 hours is to listen to the maintainers, do you feel like you need somebody like this to attract the right level of maintainer to spend a half day with us?
So the that open source rockstar comment within the slide deck was more along the lines when this was originally scoped to be significantly larger instead of the smaller event. We haven't actually rediscussed whether or not that role is still warranted, given the higher priority focus on the workshop itself and on the panel, and soliciting that comment back. If it goes the other way and we want to turn this more into a formalized event, having an individual kind of set the stage for expectations, content, as well as getting everyone to the right mentality for providing that content could be useful in the future.
Okay. Yeah, certainly if you think about this as a larger scale event with a little bit more of an open invite with where you want to publicize it, that's where just two things I'd ask. One is that's probably where we'd start to involve the Linux Foundation events team, and that means thinking about a budget assigned to this and needing to reconcile that with other things. And second, it's thinking about this event in the context of other OpenSSF events through the course of the year. You know, we like doing events. We like pulling people together. I think it's important. We also don't want to burn people out. We know travel budgets. Well, this is virtual, so it doesn't quite fall into that. But you know, if we say this is the one event for maintainers to attend in the year, we want to make sure that really is the one event we want to pull people to, right? And so we have to think about this in context with OpenSSF days and other things. If it were to be more of a bigger public event, but we can talk about that later.
So let's start with the small one and see how well it goes.
Perfect.
Have we thought about thank you swag?
Oh, we never talked about it. That's a good idea. I'll always into swag. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for 40 or 50 people.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we can definitely, see that it will be helpful to attract.
So
some ideas.
Sorry, switching topics. So just to keep everybody on the same page as we are, because there'll be a lot of these decisions that we are taking. Do you suggest that we create like a mailing list of people and then like use that to circulate for example, the date or other information around, or how do we keep everybody informed?
Well, so there should be a place for the planners to discuss this. I do see the Slack channel here, the virtual summit maintainers of critical open source projects. You may want to use that, and then there might be a second either channel or other facility you can provide to communicate with the 40 maintainers who presumably you want to confirm in some way, register in some way, yeah, we can get that set up for you.
Okay, thank you.
But are you all using this Slack channel to coordinate on this idea and the planning for it?
Yes, we are, but I was more thinking like, how do I, like Michael is probably in that, so sure, maybe we include you in that channel. So how do we get like more people, for example, like for you to be informed about stuff, or people like Stephen Hendricks or Hillary Carter that you mentioned, them also involved, like, is that just invite them to the channel?
First off, let me talk to them, explain the context for this, figure out how they want to divide this. Probably just one or the other of them, would be involved, and I think they'd be in a supportive role rather than a coordinating role. And then there'd be somebody else from my team, probably Kahil, but let me figure out who I would assign as the kind of person responsible from the OpenSSF staff for making sure this event happens and then facilitating the event directly. So let me come back to you with that, but for the time being, amongst this group here, let's use that Slack channel, and I'll follow that as well.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. Sorry to have a meeting time today, everyone. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Any other topics on this, or can we move to metrics dashboard?
Really quickly, I just had a question. I'll also follow that channel as well. And then is the idea that this would be a completely private event, or like parts of it we'd want to share more broadly? Are there thoughts on that? And then in terms of, like you mentioned, some content that might come out of the results.
It will definitely open, event. But all the discussions are in public too. So we want to make it as much as public, as we can.
Can I push back on that just a bit? I mean, it sounded like, at least from the deck that I saw, the idea was that it was a 40-ish maintainers from 15 different projects, and that it would be a small workshop kind of setting. So I presume you wouldn't want publicity for this or an open, invite. We'd probably
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of this initially we're looking at Chatham House rules. Folks are tend to be a little bit more frank and upfront about that. So at this time, as long as it's a small scale event and this is the first time we're doing it, we'd like to try to keep it as private as possible. In the future, though, that may be for reconsideration as we continue to move forward the lessons learned from this. But again, going back to Brian's original comment about the context of how this information is being gathered and who it's being gathered from is going to be most important for us to decide and determine the structure of future events.
Yeah, I think we'll have to have some sort of readout from this that we do make public, perhaps as a short blog post of some sort. But yeah, I think it's not otherwise something we pre-announce or anything.
Yeah, I think that makes sense for the kind of event.
Terrific. Thank you, everyone. So I'm really excited to see this going forward. Super cool. Be super happy to participate too. But awesome. Metrics dashboard. Who would like to take this one?
Yeah. Hey, hello everyone. So we have not made so much progress on this one. We're still working on the MVP, how the MVP look like. I know we've been working on that Google Doc, but yeah, so that's one portion of it. And the second thing that I need is regarding that SIG. So what we want to do is we want to set up a mailing list, but we just don't know. And again, sorry, I'm not familiarized with the processes, like who are the people part of it and whom to keep in the loop, and where to seek out for, like help in terms of the feedback and all that. So that is still in flux. So those are some of the topic I had.
Okay, so we can just, I think some of those we can just knock off here. So mailing list. So you want this as like whatever. I would call, maybe metrics dashboard is too specific, but like whatever, metrics at lists.openssf.org.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah.
Okay. So okay, so we'll leave that one highlighted. You can pick whatever name you want. Jennifer, would you be able to help, or do you know who can create mailing lists in the?
I saw that, and Nirav, I saw you're asking this as well. I'll relay that to the operations team, and so we'll get that set up with the right naming convention.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's good for everybody to know. If you need things similar to that, I think it's just operations at openssf.org is like
that's fine. Yeah,
is a magical team that does magic.
Yeah, and so Brian and Michael, how does it work about? I think we're supposed to send some email to TAC or someone. I don't know if that happened.
No. So what I would do is I would. I mean, Brian, unless you have a better way, send a note on Slack to the TAC channel and say, hey, we've been working on a thing. We'd really like your input. Can we get on the schedule for a TAC meeting coming up? Either we've attached a deck that slightly describes it, or we'll be there to present, and you'll get, whatever 20 minutes or whatever, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, and you know, I'd be happy to work with you on kind of describing that, framing it the right way. But it's a pretty open and accommodating group, pretty friendly group. But you will get lots of feedback, I'm sure. I think the important thing is that was the decision of this group to start the SIG, and it's not TAC doesn't have to approve it. They just want to be informed about it. And what we're doing is bringing this to them to invite them to be involved in the process. I'm just aware a little bit of the sensitivity of this. You know, NeurOp's a Linux Foundation employee, and one of the things we're really trying to do is make sure that this is a community process, not just something that the LF is driving. Having many of you who are interested in this also coming to the presentation and being a part of that conversation will be important. And we'll just, you know, we'll be aware of this as we engage in this. You know, we'll be just looking for other voices from the community to really be a champion for this.
Yeah, like a main help I needed is like I have a vision the way we had it from the Stream 2 perspective, but like the vision is slightly getting changed, right? Because it's more around community and all that. So the main thing I need help from product perspective in defining this MVP. And I know Azim and his team is helping me on this one, but in addition to Azim, right, like I would like to get more feedback. And I know Brian is also working on some of the product ownership perspective, but net, yeah, we just need help from the MVP perspective, like how the MVP should look like from the feedback perspective.
Is that the post that you put in the Stream 2 channel?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's the one that we are going to use, like that's the doc we're going to use it, how MVP should look like. But there was the additional one that we used for the Stream 2, but it's not relevant anymore.
Oh, sorry. Is this the doc? Is that doc the one that you want feedback on now? So sorry, you said you were working on look and feel and like product kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Is that a different doc, or is that?
Yeah. So let me share my screen so that way. So what I'm proposing is, so this is something like a high level plan that we had it, right? And then Azim and Brian has provided feedback on strategy, mission, and vision. That's all great. So now we are at the stage like for next 3 months, right? Like what should we focusing on?
Mm-hmm.
So the action item that we had it is, let's make sure that we define our MVP, what exactly we are trying to build, right? And make sure everyone is online. So we just need a feedback around that, like around some of these points, because I don't want like I define something and then become a part of it, right? Like, so I want more feedback around it so that we can clearly define the vision for the product.
Got it. So you're looking for feedback on answers to those questions.
That's right.
Okay, got it. Okay, so it's not about like, are those the right questions to? I mean, I guess it is if there are other
so
questions too, but yeah.
Yeah, we can come up with the detail breakdowns, how those, but at least we need some like a high level feedback instead of like all that. This is the scorecard from the user perspective. What are the things that we would like to see it, right? And then we can come up with the plan and all that stuff.
Got it. So for everybody in the larger work group, it's a great chance to like get specific in terms of you know, what problem is this trying to solve? All the questions in that doc. So I think everybody, the edit links in the meeting notes, party on.
And Azim had a couple of things that he was thinking to share as well. Azim, I don't know if it is a right time, but.
Yeah, I mean, nothing specific. I was just, I thought maybe a good time to discuss the MBSR. I think we were having some discussion over the docs. So we thought maybe the meeting might be a good place to discuss what should be like the mission vision, just like a one-liner that we all agree upon. So yeah, like, do you want to maybe share the doc so that we can talk it through? Or?
Yeah, I can share it. Yeah, this is the one we had it. So yeah, this is something Brian and Azim and Jay has also provided feedback, but this is kind of high level mission, vision, and strategy that we have put out there. Yeah, we would like to get a feedback on this as well. In terms
Yeah.
of.
Yeah, I can give like a very brief context here, right? So I mean, like this is my wording, so feel free to wordsmith it or like change it completely. But I feel like we are building this solution more for the open source consumers rather than maintainers, right? Like I'm assuming the solution that we're building is for anyone planning to consume open source. They have a single place, single source of truth to go and look at how the overall project's health is looking like. Along with things like Scorecard, I think I'm assuming they want to know how well the community is doing, how often contributors are making contributions, and all of these things, right? So I feel this is more targeted toward consumers and the answers they want to know about, like how does the overall health of this community look like? What kind of practices are they following and stuff like that. So yeah, just wanted to get an understanding of like, does that fit well with what folks are thinking about the dashboard here, or like, maybe we are completely off, or are there other personas that we are missing?
I think we know that's question.
Yeah, sorry, thanks. So yeah, Asim, when we started this initiative, right, like we were looking for the replacement for metrics, and I think metrics have millions of components. Like why we are restricting the 10,000 critical component repositories? I mean, is this just about repositories, or it's a package or components like?
Yeah. So.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So right now we focus around the repositories only. That is part of that. Again, like in order to define the success criteria, right? Like what's the success criteria look like? So we thought like we start with the 10K first, and then eventually grow that. So it's by repository.
Yeah, is it 10K particular ecosystem or 10K from each language ecosystem or things like that? Like, do we have any definition of that 10K? What all it's include?
Yeah, we can add more granular to it. Yeah.
I think maybe we're using repository in a loose way here, or at least maybe we should just be clear. Is our repositories, GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, or are repositories GitHub, NPM, and Debian?
Yeah. So what we are referring is like repository which is hosted on the GitHub, GitLab. That is what we are referring here.
Okay, I would suggest making that just 10K critical OSS projects, and that way you detach it from the implementation.
Okay, sure.
Also, are we going to reuse the Bigquery data available for the scorecard and other stuff we are currently using in the metrics, or is it completely a different data source we are going to use?
Yeah, so we have not defined that like from the implementation perspective right now. So what we thought is, okay, let's figure out first what we're trying to build, what we're trying to solve. And then from there, we'll discuss more from the implementation perspective. So that is where I have defined it like the part of it.
I was going to ask too, for the level of detail where we start thinking about, what is that kind of user journey? And I know there's a couple of personas described, but if we flesh that out further, like thinking about how people even discover this dashboard, how they're going to return to it and use it on a regular basis, is that something, that would be under, say, stage 3, or would you think that should be included a little bit earlier?
Yeah, so there is no like guarantee in the order, Brian, but yeah, I definitely would be included part of stage 3, but we can kind of change the order, right? We can start that first, but yeah, like the idea here is that as a user, right? Like what's the user journey looks like, and what are the things that user is trying to solve, right? So those are the things that we want to focus. Yeah, but the order is not guaranteed. We can change it however we want.
Yep, thank you. That makes sense.
So something that we talked about in the past, and I think there were strong opinions on both sides of this, but is this a just the facts dashboard, or are we willing to give it a score, give it a grade, A, B, C, D? And I think the reason that's important is what I've seen in, I mean, a lot of dashboards, you know, you've had 3 commits in the past 12 months. Is that good? Is that bad? There's a lot of context that you as the consumer don't have, and I don't think we can expect, you know, most consumers to kind of do the math themselves to see if 3 is a good or a bad number. And maybe it's I guess Scorecard does it. If you have an 8, that's better than a 2. So the mission here, single source of truth, is it, I mean, do you also include opinions in there about what makes a good project? I guess you have to.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Maybe just being explicit about where the opinions are and whatnot.
I put my hand up. Sorry, I wasn't sure.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So I think the headline of this should be: here is the one-stop shopping kind of the you know, the repo for all objective data relating to open source projects, that, you know, in the long term, that this is a place to pull together not just the scorecard data, the best practices badge data, but potentially as well results from scans, from dependency analysis, from other things, right? But also looking at things like, when was the last time this project had a third-party audit? How much churn has there been since then? What was the result of that third-party audit? Like, let me see the report and understand, did that lead to CVEs or bugs being closed? You know, think about other sources of objective data, right? The chaos metrics, for example, other things. In fact, having a rich library of things that feed into this data set is something that open source would be great at helping us build. Having a common data lake that, you know, we have the reference version of, but could be copied pretty easily so that folks can do their own analysis or their own kind of visualization or look at their own internal use of software. And then having a reference dashboard to visualize that data, but the prospect of folks being able to build their own dashboards, you know, off a copy of the data set or otherwise, you know, is the best way to fan this out, and I think allow for you know, some of that to, those questions answer themselves. I would shy away from, just from as a diplomat, shy away from having the MVP focus on saying, here is your credit score. You know, this project scores 700. You know, this one scores 435. I think showing here is a picture of the different objective data and the numbers and what, you know, how that relates to other projects is very useful. But I think knowing what are the specific weights to lead to an overall score is a very charged conversation that you might want to just defer for now. And I don't know that it's necessary to demonstrate the impact of this. That's my nerd diplomat answer, though. Looks like Azim has his hand up.
Yeah, I think I was about to make the exact same point that you mentioned, like purely strategically speaking. I think it's a hard problem to start with, to say, let's have a cumulative score, especially given that not all the sources are guaranteed to be there for every single project. So purely from a strategy point of view, it seems like might be worth punting on that problem for now and considering doing the cumulative score a little further down the road when we have a bit more clarity around what kind of sources we have.
Cool. Emily, I see your comment in chat. I agree. Historical trending would be pretty important here.
This is often a conversation that I've had with other individuals out in industry about what is the security health of a project, and a lot of folks go back to how active it is, and it's entirely project dependent, and it's based off of that maintainer. So I fully expect that whatever comes out of this, there will be various government agencies or regulatory bodies looking at this to establish security health indicators for their own requirements and frameworks. So whatever we do, we need to be very cautious, provide due diligence and the justification for applying it.
Which really, I mean, I think a lot of that comes down to being transparent in, what the rules are that, and most of it, well, all of this being open source means that the rules are available somewhere, but being overly transparent with that.
Yeah, but defaults matter too. If the default is that the score, you land on the page for log4j and it has a score of 73, that's, even though all the code behind that is open and changeable, it's going to cause questions, right? What's the?
Oh,
and you can be transparent about what led to it. But
no, sorry. Yeah, I meant even at the what does if I say that the log4j has had active contributions in the past 3 months, well, what's a contribution? Is it a code commit? Is it a merge? Is it a issue? Is it a smiley face on an issue? And having that be so even at the objective level, being transparent in what things mean.
It's both in spirit of this project and I think important to deflect criticism that every time you show a bit of data, somebody's able to drill down and understand where that data came from.
Yeah.
What's the algorithm that led to, this score? And the scorecards conversations about what do those numbers mean and what's the weighting of all the different things you look at. That's going to get, the more that scorecards gets used out there in meaningful ways, the more charged those conversations are going to become. So that's something to think about as we prep for the future of scorecards.
Yeah.
But, I'm so excited about this project. Every time I talk about the metrics dashboard work and the scorecards work with people, lights go off in ways you wouldn't believe. Even people who aren't programmers, people who think about, once they realize open source software is pretty secure by and large, but there's a wide variance in some of the objective, realities on the ground between different projects. They go, well, how do I learn more? And how do we learn more about that is just, even that's kind of an open question, a blind spot, I think, for a lot of us inside open source. So this is going to be so helpful, I think, in raising not just the bar, but the floor in how we build open source code.
Christine?
Yeah, I was just going to also mention that even as we defer some of like the opinionated scores and all, maybe it's already been said, but just being able to understand what that data means and where it comes from. So even though that it's actionable will be good as well. And the second point I wanted to make is that there's a different working group called within the OpenSSF called the Best Practices Working Group that put together like a concise guide for evaluating open source software. Perhaps some of this work here can then be like channeled back into either updating that doc or actually giving guidance to how this dashboard could work together with that to make more informed decisions.
Sounds good. So because we have quite a bit of you, quite a bit of the folks on this call are driving this. Is there anything that the working group that you need from us or from anybody else? I know getting in front of TAC is one thing, so we'll make that happen. Other than that,
no, I think no, we don't need other than that. I think the main thing we need is just help in defining this MVP. I'm going to sync up with a couple of folks offline. But yeah, continue to add your comments on this doc and then we'll further brainstorm on it. Looks like Vinod has something to share.
Yeah, sorry, I have a question about the MVP, the project itself. Is it going to be open source?
Yes, yes, it is going to be open source.
Okay. Thanks.
And Rob, do you know when the SIG meetings are happening? I think I'd asked, or is it something you're waiting to set up? Because you had one meeting already.
Yeah. So yeah, I have not set it up anything. So Brian is going to help me set up the mailing list and Zoom. And then I need to work on the timing with everyone. Like what time would work for everyone. And then I was hoping that during that call, we'll continue to work on defining this MVP further.
Yeah, one quick question, Michael. So before we go to the tag and like get the SIG set up, is that do we need to have the MVSR and stuff like that sketched out before that, or can we use the SIG time to actually sketch these things out? Like,
So the SIG is a and someone who knows better than I, correct me if I'm wrong here. The SIG is a very loosely defined thing still. So the SIG exists. Have meetings whenever you want, preferably on the community calendar so other folks can join. You do not need permission. The next point that you'd need permission or need approval to do anything really is when you're asking for money, and that would, at the same time, it's polite to get input from the TAC because they should kind of know what's going on. So that open discussion is more about the discussion and less about approval for anything.
Sounds good. I think then, maybe we should like actually get the mailing list and like a time set up for ourselves. I think we have enough things on the agenda that we can have a focused meeting on. So maybe that should be the next step here.
Okay. So where can I get everyone's availability? Like what's the median? Like, should I put it in that stream to Slack channel so that I can get everyone's availability, or I can just randomly?
I would do a doodle, open doodle poll, put it out there for a couple of days.
Yeah, the one I did last time. Okay, I'll do that.
Jay?
Yeah, so just thinking about the order of the next steps, right? I don't believe I think both of these things can happen simultaneously. The what we need to do with the TAC, but then also I think we can go to either Jory or Khalil to actually get a meeting set up on the calendar. So once we do the doodle poll, of course, we get that time back, get a meeting set up on the calendar. And then I think we can do the mailing list after that, right? I don't.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Actually, because we have the magical mailing list, magical operations at openssf.org. Say, hey, can you set up a recurring thing at this time? So please set up this mailing list. All that stuff is operations at.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're good on the security dashboard side. Thank you.
Love it. Thank you all. Office hours. I don't see. I don't think we have any updates on the call, but there are updates in the Slack channel. So please take a look at office hours. I believe the first date. Oh, we have a date. Okay, so I'll just copy this into the meeting notes. First session is Friday, October 28th at 11 a.m. Pacific. If you have not volunteered, or if you don't know that you volunteered, ping Marta in Slack or whatever to volunteer. Please show up. I'm hoping that this is a very first pilot, so we'll see. No, I think this would be good, and the purpose of this is that one-on-one connection with open source maintainers that need help in anything related to security. So like true office hours, just kind of stop by and chat. So we'll see how that goes. Security reviews, Amir is not, oh, sorry, is any comments on that topic? Hello, David, you're super early for your next meeting.
There is the problem of having to be in two places at once, even with Zoom.
You know, you need a doppelganger. Security review, sorry, I don't see Amir. There were some follow-ups from last time that I think one of them is on me to take a look at. No, it's not security reviews. There's security insights. Let's see, we don't have enough time for any more topics. Is there any last comments anybody would like to make? Otherwise, we'll move the remaining topics and we'll start with those next time. Thank you all very much. I really appreciate everybody's time. This was a great conversation. Looking forward to all these projects moving forward and changing the world. So thank you all very much. It's very much appreciated. Have a good one.
I'm curious as to what meeting David was early for.
I'm just assuming.
Yeah. No, it was an SBOM meeting that I could not switch off. So it happens. Take care, everybody.